So we're going to experience failure, but we're also going to experience success. We're also going to experience wins. Think of a golfer. Most golfers spend their whole life losing. I mean, in a tournament with 80 golfers, one person wins. Out of all the shots that they take 75, 80 shots in a round, only 18 of those actually go into the cup. Most of golf is about failure. But no golfer who stands on the first tee says, I'm here to fail. I know I'm going to fail. If you ask them, are you certain you're going to win this competition? Most of them, if they were honest, would probably have to say, well, I might not. But it's worth the shot at it. And it's the same with evangelization. We're not going to succeed every time, but we're not going to fail every time either. If we have a mentality that we're going to fail every time, first of all, it's not realistic, but also we're not going to do anything. We're just going to say, we're going to give up before we even start. But if we're convinced we're going to win every time, if everything we say is going to just be the magic bullet that leads people to conversion, if every ministry we do is just going to be perfect, if every book that we give someone is going to lead to their conversion, well, we're going to set ourselves up to be grandly disappointed, because that's not going to happen either. I think we just need to be realistic. And this realism comes when we recognize two things. The first is human freedom. That no matter how eloquent and persuasive and devout and faithful and holy you are, there will be people who will see the Christian life lived out in you so beautifully that will hear your awesome, attractive words and will say no. Because they have freedom to choose whether or not they want to respond to the gospel. So the first part is human freedom. The second part is God's grace. It doesn't depend solely on our efforts. We don't really know what's going to happen. I remember a friend of mine had a couple that he was friends with, and they were living kind of a lukewarm Catholic life. They were, they weren't living a life of chastity. And he asked me, Michael, do you have any books that you recommend for them? And so I had a little book, and I suggested he give it to them. And I didn't even know if he gave it to them or not. That was sort of the end of the conversation. About 3 months later, he came to me and he said, you know how you recommended that I give him that book? Well, I gave him that book. And not only are they now living a life of chastity, but actually the guy in the relationship actually is becoming a Catholic now, just through that one book. Listen, I didn't expect that to go anywhere. I was like, you know what are the odds they're even going to read the book? And if they read the book, they're going to kind of laugh at it. And even if they pay attention to it, are they going to allow it to change their life so much that he would even want to become a Catholic? And yet that's God's grace in their life. And so I think as evangelists, we need to have not optimism and not pessimism. What we need is the virtue of hope. And what is the virtue of hope? The virtue of hope is a trust that God is active and alive, that he has a good plan for us and for every other person, that he wants to see them come and know and love him. And if we live in hope, what we recognize is that offer of salvation that we make, whether it's directly in a conversation or indirectly through some event or program or some book that we're giving or some resource that we're introducing people to or some event that they come to, that God will be alive in that God will be doing something in their souls. And even if ultimately they choose to say no to him, that God never gives up on them. And so we can expect that if we continue to persevere in the work of evangelization, that we're going to see God do awesome things. And the truth is that 10 failures are quickly drowned out by one great success. Because it's not our success, it's seeing God's fingers, God's grace, God's life present in another person. And that is one of the most beautiful, powerful things. I've always found that no matter how discouraged I feel, when I see God's grace active in someone's life, it gives me the courage to go forth and to have the boldness that I need to continue to respond to the call to evangelize. So expect big wins. God will do great things through you.
What are big wins for you? What are narratives you tell yourself around big wins? Do I take risks and allow God to show up?